As more and more older interview clips of activist and upcoming Star Wars Rey director Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy of WEF fame comes to light, the more the built-in audience freaks out. In an interesting twist though, there is now evidence to suggest that Disney's higher-ups are freaking out as well and having second thoughts to boot. Being a WEF affiliate, Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy has appeared in hours upon hours of recorded discussions and interviews that are just waiting to be discovered by the Star Wars audience. All such WEF-affiliated talks are both shocking and repugnant in equal measure to normal people, though quite revealing as to the mindset of our self-appointed betters, and in the case of Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy, of what defines her as a filmmaker, however accidental a filmmaker, as we can see in this clip found by Anna, that Star Wars girl.
I think at the heart of everything, I am a storyteller and an activist. And my body of work over the last 20 years has been guided by my activism, and every single piece of work that I've ever created has a piece of activism in it. It could be very overt or it could be covert, but it is there. And I think that as a storyteller, I'm not sure if all of you know this, but I'm not a trained filmmaker. So I never went to film school. I went to Smith College and did my undergraduate and studied economics and political science like a good Pakistani girl. And then I did my graduate studies, but also in international politics. And so I am an accidental filmmaker.
You hear that? Everyone who dutifully went to film school at great cost, learning the skills to become a director, but who never got a shot at it. So now you're doing something else entirely? Well, as it turns out, you chose poorly. Instead of wasting all that time learning filmmaking, you should have just become a man-hating activist instead, because then maybe Kathleen Kennedy would have thrown a $200 million movie your way. Turns out, that was the real qualification she was looking for in a director. Naturally, this has what little remains of the Star Wars fanbase incensed, and that entirely justifiable anger in turn of course has the professional defenders of the Hollywood establishment outraged, reverting to their traditional card that any and all criticism is due to misogyny, ignoring 100% of the actual criticism presented. But the defenders are the minority on this one. Fact remains, no one asked for or wanted a Rey movie in the first place, as through no fault of actress Daisy Ridley, Rey Palpatine is the visual embodiment of the sequel trilogy, and therefore the utter destruction of the Star Wars brand. A Rey movie is thus guaranteed to fail, and gradually starting to realize this, that even has Disney spooked. Before the Rey movie was officially announced at Star Wars Celebration in London last year, our good friend WDW Pro had the exclusive scoop that the movie was in development and that the announcement would be forthcoming weeks in advance. As he reported then, and later confirmed in another scoop only yesterday, see the link in the description for that full conversation, it was Disney's C-suite, meaning Bob Iger and his batch of personal minions, that commissioned a Rey movie in the first place. What his sources confirmed in yesterday's scoop though, was that there was no script, no story idea, no organic need for the further adventures of Rey Palpatine to be told. There was only, presumably Iger's intention that a Rey movie be made and retroactively redeem the sequel trilogy. While that scoop does belong exclusively to WDW Pro, massive kudos to him for bringing it and all the additional information in it to light. There have been many hints there was no locked script. Daisy Ridley herself has even alluded to that. And we've been saying the same thing pertaining to Bob Iger's motivation. Here's what I said in our previous video from January 4th. Honestly, Bob Iger should set his foot down and stop this madness from happening in the first place, but I fear he's not going to do that. You see, he is every bit as guilty for Rey as Kathleen Kennedy. In fact, he may even be more guilty. It was Bob Iger that threw George Lucas' scripts for his sequel trilogy in the trash and went with what J.J. Abrams and Kathleen Kennedy wanted instead. Because of that fateful decision, the success of Rey is now tied to Iger's legacy, so he's going to back one last-ditch effort to make her click with audiences and retroactively salvage the sequel trilogy. But back to DW Pro's most recent scoop, because there were more revelations there. Since there was no script, just the idea of a Rey movie to fix Star Wars, the story had to be cooked up after the fact, and apparently they came up with two different takes. The first they came up with is that Rey has Kylo Ren's daughter, likely the result of them Force sexting. And when that daughter is 9 and a student at Rey's Jedi Academy, she becomes a new kind of Jedi that merges the dark and light side of the Force and has to go up against Darth Plagueis. This was rejected because it was too Marvel-like, but from what I understand, the other story doesn't sound much better, because it involves a Sith and the Witches of Dathomir. Because that's what you get when you make Dave Filoni the head of creative matters at Lucasfilm. His wife exerting influence through him, as she genuinely identifies as a witch or something. I'm not entirely sure of her exact religious denomination. You tell me in the comments. Either way, both of these different approaches to a Rey movie has one thing in common, namely that none of them will work. WDW Pro sources report that Disney had ordered what sounds to me like a cost-benefit analysis, and the result of this was that pretty much no matter what they do, the end result of a Rey movie was a net negative. Net negative is finance speak for that you're better off not doing this, like at all. It will lose money, it will damage the brand, it will lose third-party confidence, that sort of thing. Whenever the result of any kind of analysis is net negative, the correct answer is to stop what you're doing, consider all the resources you've already invested as sunk cost. Do not try to recoup them, just stop throwing good money after bad, write it off as a loss on the next tax filing, and move on with something else that might actually deliver a return for the shareholders. That's the correct answer in any such situation. That's what any sane company would do. But Bob Iger's Disney is not a sane company. On the contrary, it's an all-out activist company, which you also might even call an insane company. So rather than pulling the plug on the spot, WDW Pro sources reveal that they are instead discussing how they can hide what level of failure the movie inevitably is going to be. You see, they have Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny fresh in mind, and they couldn't hide that failure. So what if they make this Rey movie a Disney Plus exclusive? Or better yet, if they release it on Disney Plus and in theaters at the same time? That way, they could blame the box office on streaming and the Nielsen streaming numbers on the box office. All they would have to do is cut the budget. As insane as that may sound, it actually fits right in line with Chris Gore of Film Threat's recent speculation that Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy's New Year's comments to CNN were initiated by her directly, specifically to make it more difficult for Disney to do anything to cut the budget or muck with the wide theatrical release of the first woman to ever influence the direction of Star Wars in history, because, it's 2024 and all. While the movie is still progressing right now, it is not scheduled to shoot until fall. And if the C-suite indeed is having doubts about the movie, even if Bob Iger really wants a Rey movie to fix his own past mistakes, fall is a long time away, and that's a long time for things to go awry. I have a hunch that whatever happens, the development of this movie, whether it ends up being made or not, will be one for the history books, and we will be here to cover it. Let me know your thoughts on all of this in the comments.